Before traveling to Israel this past Monday, I was asked, was I scared? The answer was yes, but not so much about my own safety. I strongly believed our Federation of Greater Metro West and the security they worked with would provide a safe experience as possible. I was mostly worried that my travels to Israel would be a burden to communities on the ground. I knew this trip would be meaningful for me, but it seemed hard to understand how our visit would be perceived by those still reeling from so much loss, deaths of loved ones, of homes, of community. My nervousness was quickly lessened each and every stop during our 36 hours on the ground. The Israelis we met with were so touched, comforted, and bolstered by our travels. They opened up their hearts, shared their stories, and gave us an honest and heartfelt window into their lives. And so tonight, I share just a few of the stories of the people I met and the experiences I had. But before I do that, I want to thank our Federation and our CEO, Dov Ben Shimon, a member of our temple, for asking me to be on this 10-person mission. And I also want to thank this congregation for your support, for your well wishes, and for being by my side during the past week. We started our mission in Mitzpeh Ramon, a 2-hour drive south of an empty Ben Gurion airport. Mitzpeh Ramon is in the Negev desert, and it is one of the most beautiful places in all of Israel. A small town with about 5,000 people living on the edge of a giant maktesh, similar to a crater that is made out of colorful rock formation. I'm sure many of you have been there during your travels to Israel. At the height of tourist season, hotels are filled with travelers looking to take a 4x4 ride through the maktesh, or hike, or have a luxurious spa vacation. On our visit to Mitzpeh Ramon, it was packed, not with tourists, but instead with 3,500 evacuees from kibbutzim that border Gaza. We sat on the balcony of the youth hostel that now houses evacuees from kibbutz Erez, one of our sister communities in Israel that sits just 2 miles north of Gaza. There we listened to the heartbreak of kibbutzniks. We learned of the heroism of Amir, who was one of the first to confront the terrorists at the gates of Erez. His sister shared with us that he battled the terrorists and was able to prevent many of them from infiltrating the kibbutz. He saved so many lives. But unfortunately, he was murdered on October 7th. He leaves behind his wife, who is due to give birth next month. In the youth hostel, the members of Kibbutz Erez are trying to make life as routine as possible. Each family has their own room. There are WeWork spaces for adults to try to do their jobs. There are social workers meeting with individuals, and kids are learning in schools again. The money that our federation has raised through the Israel Emergency Fund has been supporting necessary supplies to transform spaces into nursery school rooms, help find teachers to take care of the children of kibbutz eras, and to provide meals and materials necessary to live their lives. Yet even with creating some routine, there's a long path to traverse. There is still much unknown. When will they go back to their homes? Will they go back to their homes? How will they sleep if they do? Overlooking the desert's landscape, Michal, a leader of the Metro West Partnership, shared that it feels like she has been jet-lagged for the past 4 weeks. In her words, she eats, but everything is tasteless. She sleeps, but her nights are restless. She feels she needs to be strong for her kids, but then she escapes to the edge of the Maktesh and bursts out in tears. From Mitzpeh Ramon, we drove an hour north to Ofakim, another of our Federation's sister cities. Ofakim was the farthest point east that Hamas infiltrated, about 20 kilometers from the Gaza border. The desert city has about 30,000 residents, and we paid a condolence call to the home of Roni Abaharon. Roni was an off-duty police detective, and when the sirens started blaring, he knew something was deeply wrong. He leapt out of bed and ran straight into the streets of Ofakim, where he was met by 2 white pickup trucks filled with Hamas terrorists. His family shared with us that Roni loved a good party, some dancing, and a lot of fishing. He would always go above and beyond, and he did that protecting his city that Shabbat morning as well. We stopped for lunch at a local restaurant in Ofakim that was busy with reservists grabbing a falafel and shawarma. Our group was introduced to 2 of these reservists. One had a makeshift veil in her hair made out of what looked like a window curtain. We were told that they were getting married the next day, and the restaurant exploded in applause. Even in deep despair, there was life, there was love, there was celebration. After lunch, we drove north to Jerusalem. Once there, we continued to hear stories of heartbreak, pain, heroism, and community. At Hadassah Hospital on Mount Scopus, we toured the rehab center where we met Michal, who had traveled from her home in Jerusalem to an army base near Gaza with her 10 children to celebrate Simchat Torah. When the attacks broke out at the Zikim army base, Michal, a nurse, was able to help an injured soldier survive, but was shot 3 times in the process. She, along with her family, fled to a safe room on the base and survived, and was brought to Hadassah Hospital, where she interned to help bring movement back to her arm. We visited a hotel in Jerusalem housing evacuees from the north. We saw Israeli volunteers coming together to set up a room with tons of supplies for those who had fled their homes. There was clothing and school supplies and games for kids so that there could be some normalcy. And throughout the city, on every street corner were Israeli flags, banners, memorials for those who were murdered, and signs for those who were kidnapped. There was a national sense of grief, but there's also a national sense of unity, taking care of lone soldiers, the broken families, the displaced, and each other. And one of the most heartbreaking meetings, which I've already touched upon this evening, was the one we had with 19-year-old Ron Sherman's mother, Mayan, and brother, Down. For 4 weeks, Ron has been held captive in Gaza. Mayan said she's not sad. She just can't breathe. She wants her child home. As I shared, Ron's a messy fan, loves to travel, play his PlayStation, and interact with animals. His family implored us to do everything we can do to bring home the hostages. Let's commit to calling our elected officials to make sure that they are doing everything they can to free the hostages. Tonight, we set a chair out for Ron, representing all the 240 people held hostage this Shabbat. The stories I heard, the things I have seen, and being in Israel this week has impacted me greatly. My sense of Klal Yisrael, Jewish peoplehood, has been strengthened. Each Israeli we met was so touched by our presence and our community support, both emotionally and financially. And even with all of this happening on the ground in Israel, I heard from so many Israelis about their deep concern about what is happening in the United States. The rise of anti-Semitism, the hate on college campuses, and for our own safety. One of my colleagues on our mission said that these 36 hours were the first time that he felt comfortable wearing a kippah publicly since October 7th. I promised them that we would continue to support Israel and that our congregation was also committed to being a loud voice against anti-Semitism here in the United States. As we wrapped up our mission in Israel, we walked through passport control. We descended the long ramp towards our gate. And as we walked down, on the side were the pictures of the 240 hostages in Gaza. Like so many times over the past 36 hours, there was a pit in my stomach and my eyes filled with tears. And at the very end of the ramp, we looked up, and there was one last sign. Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live.